Welcome to the Fearless Happiness Podcast, where we showcase phenomenal individuals who have overcome serious traumas, life obstacles, and challenges to find their own path to fearless happiness. Listen as Max Njist invites guests from all around the world to share their experiences and spread strength, hope, and faith. This is the Fearless Happiness Podcast, and this is Max Njist.
All right, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this world. This is Max from the Fearless Happiness Podcast. And today I have a very special and amazing guest all the way from the UK, Felicity Ashley. But what I like to do, Felicity, is have you introduce yourself, like who you are, what it is you do, and then we are going to rock and roll and have some fun.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Max. And it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Felicity Ashley. My background is in corporate marketing. So I worked in large corporate businesses in the UK for over 20 years. But I'm now a professional motivational speaker. And that was really brought about through a few life-changing experiences that started with rowing across the Atlantic. So I rowed across the Atlantic as part of a crew of 4 working mums called the Mothership. A few years ago, that was over 3,000 miles rowing, 2 hours on, 2 hours off, 24 hours a day for 40 days. And then I was diagnosed with bowel cancer. So I add being a cancer survivor to my story. And I've recently returned from Nepal, where I completed the world's highest marathon, the Everest Base Camp Marathon. And that was to mark the 3-year anniversary of my cancer diagnosis and to show that you really can come back stronger after adversity and challenge. I'm also a mother of 3 children. My children are 7, 10, and 12 now. And I'm a Amazon bestselling author, having recently published my book. So that, in a nutshell, is me.
I love it. Wow. Right. What an honor to be, here with you today, because people, I think the ones that understand, like big camp, still way high. How long is that marathon, if I may ask? Like, what is the distance?
It's a standard marathon length, so 26 miles, 42 kilometers. The main challenge really for the Everest Base Camp Marathon is the altitude. So you're starting off from base camp. So you have to do a 10-day trek before you even get to the start line of the marathon. So it's 10 days up to base camp at 5,500 meters altitude. And then you start the marathon there, and it's 42 kilometers. And that's about 4 kilometers of descent, but about 3.5 kilometers of uphill as well during that time. And you're kind of clambering over boulders, through streams. The terrain is incredibly difficult. So it's not like any other marathon, as far as I can work out, in the world.
Right. Yeah, you got me. Like, even just if you ran flat, I'm like, I'm going to tell you something funny, right? So you know who David Goggins is, right? Who I think, do you know who David Goggins is?
No.
Okay, so he's an ex-Navy SEAL that loves to do running like that, but like those 150-mile ultra marathons, right?
Yeah.
Where it's down, up, into the cold, back into the heat. So, like, people don't understand, like, you have to trek to base camp, and then you're at that, and then you're going to run a regular marathon at that. I mean, that takes a lot of grit, a lot of strength. So, wow, like, the respect is way up here, because you went bowel cancer, right? And that was your celebrate. Like, most people would probably have a cake and have some family over. Felicity says, I'm gonna go run. This is why I love having people like yourself, right, who show the world, right? It doesn't matter what you go through, that you can overcome any obstacle, right? As long as you keep going and you don't quit on yourself, and you just, right, don't let those things get you down, right? Because I mean, you have children, I have children, I have grandchildren now, right? And the thing that scares me the most, honest with you, is all the technology, right? Like the phones, right? Because like you and I, like, we were probably raised, go play, go do, have fun, right? We weren't handed an iPad or an iPhone, or right, to occupy our time. And anyway, but we'll get into this. So, and I'm in the company of another author, which I love. Awesome. And a motivational speaker, right? Which is what I aspire to be one day, is go out there and share my story, my message. But first and foremost, I love this passion I came across of being a podcaster and having guests like you. So let's go back from it, well, as far as you want to go, right? Like, what were some of the challenges that you have faced where like you could have said, I'm just going to go status quo, I'm going to quit, whatever. But what are those points in your life where you said, that ain't me, I'm going to keep going, I'm going to show, right? Because you're a mother, that's the toughest job of all, right?
Yeah, I mean, being a mum, being a mum of three, it is a tough job, but it builds that grit and it builds that resilience, I think. But if I go back, I suppose, to where I think, maybe the first major significant challenges started, certainly in terms of a story that I kind of tell now. It started with a hip replacement. So after my first child was born, I started to get hip pain, and it was intermittent, but it was really severe. It would kind of stop me in my tracks. And after about 3 years of unsuccessful physiotherapy treatment, I finally went to see a surgeon who told me that my hip was 100% screwed. There was nothing he could do for me apart from a full replacement. And so I limped on, metaphorically and literally, for another 3 years, had another couple of children. And then when I think I was 41 at the time, or 42, I had a full hip replacement. And it was just a few weeks after having had that hip replacement that the opportunity to row across the Atlantic came along. And I think that was a kind of a pivotal moment for me when I look back, because I could have turned down that opportunity to row the Atlantic because I just had a hip replacement. But
Right.
it was my sister who said something to me which really resonated. And when she called me to say, "Look, I've got a boat. Do you want to row the Atlantic?" And I said, I can't do it. The kids are too young. They were 2, 4, and 6 at the time. And I said, "I've just had a hip replacement. Of course I can't do it." And she said, "Stop giving me reasons why you can't and start giving me reasons why you can." And it was such a simple thing to say, but it really resonated. And it made me completely change my perspective and reframe, these perceived challenges. So instead of the hip being an excuse for saying no, it was actually that became my reason to say yes, because I'd lived with kind of hip pain for about 5 or 6 years. Yeah, I was pain free now. Yes, I had some rehabilitation to do, but I had a new
Right.
hip. That wasn't, it's going to get in my way. It was actually the thing that opened the door to the opportunity. And so it became, rather than it being a challenge, having had, fairly major surgery, it actually became, it opened the door to the opportunity and gave me literally a new lease of life, physically a new lease of life, and became one of the best things I ever did. So
Right.
yeah, just a few weeks after having had that hip replacement, I said I'll row across the Atlantic and started training for that monumental physical challenge. Um, so that was probably the first, major adversity or challenge that I overcame, and it's really significant for me because it's about that sort of mindset shift and about being able to reframe challenges as opportunities. And that's then something an approach that I've taken through every challenge that I've faced since. And when you take on something like rowing across the Atlantic, it's called the world's toughest row now because it's extremely tough. It's one of the world's, most extreme endurance events, both physically and mentally. And you expect challenges, and there are so many challenges even to get to the start line. For us, we were a crew of 4 working mums, so one of the challenges was finding mums who were able to do it. So we had
Right.
multiple crew changes during the 2 years that we were training because life happens, and it meant that some people had to drop out. So those were hurdles that we had to overcome. There we had all sorts of problems with our boat, which was a really old boat and needed multiple repairs. And then adding into that mix, we were training through the depths of COVID. So we had all of those restrictions that COVID threw on the world, like lockdowns and
Right.
bubbles and everything else. So even getting together as a crew to train was difficult. So again, we just had to find ways around it. And almost at any point in our 2 years of training, we could have thrown our hands in the air and said, "It's just too difficult. We're gonna give up." But it was that resilience and that mental resilience that kicked in and kept us going and kept enabling us to pick ourselves up when we hit a roadblock and just saying, we just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other, keep going, and we will make it to the start line. So yeah, there were so many challenges just to get to that start line in the Canary Islands, let alone the challenge then of rowing 3,000 miles across the Atlantic with everything that the ocean and Mother Nature throws at you.
Right. I do just love when those people show up at the right moment and go, tell me why you can do it, right? And say you're like, no, because I mean, that's where our brain goes to, right? Like, as
Yeah.
they call it, our reptilian brain, right? Focuses on like what's going to hurt me out there. Right? And you just had surgery. So I'm sure your mind was like, nope, don't want to do it, can't do it. I just had you love your sister, right? For going, she was the push you needed, though, right? Well, look what's
Yeah.
happened because of that. And wow, talk about challenges. Like, you're right. You trained during COVID. I mean, you had to remember you had to be 6 feet between people. You
Yeah.
had to have a mask. And wow, like how did you guys pull that off? Like, it must
We
be great teamwork, one, but two, like faced with that, how was that overcome? Right. Because to you, that's a endurance,
yeah.
feat. So how did you guys overcome that? What were the challenges?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it was about, I suppose, being creative, but also just seizing the opportunities when they came along. So we had to kind of work within the confines of all the restrictions of lockdown. But as soon as the lockdown was lifted, we then had to just seize that opportunity to get together and go out on the boat and actually meet. But when we couldn't do that, we spent a lot of time on Zoom and, building relationships as a crew via Zoom. So we had a black tie posh dinner party with our husbands as a kind of a team building exercise where we literally sat around in our own kitchens or dining rooms having dinner, but all on screens on Zoom to get to know each other. So we had to work differently to as you would normally prepare for an event like that. But in some ways, again, lockdown and COVID gave us opportunities as well. So it meant that we weren't having to commute into work, which gave us more time in the day that we could train in. So I did most of my physical training at home in the garage. We were lucky enough to have gym equipment. And so in some ways, COVID was a good thing for our training because it did mean that we weren't spending hours every day getting to work and back, and we had that training time, that time that we could then utilize for training. But yeah, it was challenging, and it meant also there was this kind of blanket of uncertainty hanging over us because when we left for the start line, it was still in the time when you had to do COVID tests to enable you to fly. So we all did our tests and we flew out to the start line. But when we got there, one of our crew tested positive for COVID. And so
Oh,
we had about 13 days then before the race start, and she had to be in quarantine for 10 of those days.
wow.
And having spent the best part of 12 hours traveling out together in close confines, the risk of one of the rest of us going down with COVID at a later point was so high. So then again, it was a massive mental battle in terms of how do we keep ourselves going and keep ourselves positive when we've got a very real risk that one of us, or maybe all of us won't be able to go, won't be able to start, having trained so hard for 2 years. So it did throw so many different challenges our way, but I think what it did was prepared us absolutely thoroughly for the massive challenge that lay ahead. Because by the time we got to the start line, we were kind of ready for anything. And we were just so relieved to all get there and to have the four of us lining up on the start line to do it, that it almost overshadowed the kind of any fear or nerves or anything else, because it was just a massive sense of gratitude and relief that we were actually there doing it.
I love it, right? Because even though there's a lot of negative associated with COVID at that time, right? Like people, families being separated, and you took the opportunity to turn it into a positive. Like as you look back now, I'm sure you had rough moments where you're all were going like, "Do you really want to do this? This is a pain in the butt." Excuse me, right? Like,
Yeah.
is it worth it? But then you look back, like if you're paying attention, everyone, they didn't let any challenge that came their way stop them. They just pivot, found another way around it, right? It's like the wall, right? You either go over it or you find a way around it and you keep going. And I love that. So you guys all got up on Zoom, and that's like you were having dinner together. Um, see the grit there, everybody, and the tenacity and the resilience. It's like these moms did not let anything stop them. That's why, like, sometimes I feel like I'm harsh on my kids or grandkids because I'm like, you should listen to some of my guests. Because if they heard you, they're like, stop your whining. Like, I don't want to abuse them, but like, come on, figure a way out, right? Because in this world, mom or dad is not always going to be there for you. You're gonna have to, and you're a perfect example of going, okay, I'm going to take a bad situation and I'm still going to make it happen. And in the end, it's going to be a great situation because I just showed everybody that nothing stopped us, right? And you guys work together as a team. I mean, that one right there through Zoom is difficult, right? Like trying to figure out times but
Yeah.
you know, and I was going to ask you, right? So I know, you have to get into detail, but I know there's probably moments where you ladies look at each other and we're like, man, like this is, do you want to just have a glass of wine and call it quits? Um, I don't only speak for myself, like how did you guys keep yourself together, like say, right? Because it is a team thing that you did when those moments arose, how you guys kept that, it going in the right direction when I'm sure you guys, I mean, I can only imagine in my head the obstacles that would keep popping up for you guys.
Yeah, I think in many ways it came down to the close bonds that we shared as a crew. So we spent a lot of time building team dynamics and working on team relationships and really developing a deep understanding of each other in things like, what motivates you or how can I help you if you're having a bad day. And over the course of the training, those bonds became so strong that I think we all wanted to get to that start line for each other. And so there were a few wobbles from time to time, but when that happened, we were just there for each other, there to listen, to support each other and do everything that we could to kind of help build whoever it was back up again, and bring them along. There was no sense of blame or recrimination or anything else. It was just genuinely supporting each other and caring for each other and making sure that we all continued on that path together. And I think when you take on something like that, you have to be absolutely confident it's what you want to do. You have to be really sure of your motivation for doing it. Otherwise, I don't think you'll ever get through any of those challenges. And I think that was something that kind of united us all really was this strong motivation to do it. And the reason to do it was, I suppose for most of us, it was twofold. But the thing that united us all was to inspire our children, actually. We have 11 children between us. We've all got girls and boys. And it was so important to us to show them that mums can do anything. Just because we're mums doesn't mean our place is in the home looking after the kids. It doesn't just have to be dads or men that go out on these amazing adventures. It can be mums too. We're more than capable of doing it. And we wanted to show them that ordinary people like their mums can go and do extraordinary things, and therefore they can go and do extraordinary things, whether they're girls or boys, whether they're 15 or whether they're 45 or 55. Anyone can go and do
Right.
extraordinary things if you apply the right mindset, if you've got the right support network around you, and if you're prepared to work hard. And I think that's one of the things that really kept us going and kept us motivated and pushing on so that we didn't let those challenges stop us in our tracks. Because almost if we'd given up, when we got to a hurdle, what message is that sending to our children about what you do when life gets hard? So almost we became even more determined to get through them, to send a positive message to our children about how you get through things.
Right. And I I love that, right? Because the reason I asked you that, right? Because being a team also made you a strong individual. You know what I mean? Like, because
Yeah.
you guys learned how to communicate with each other, what you needed, what they needed. You know what I mean? And like you said it, I'm a mama's boy, right? So I know my mom was tough as nails, loved her to death, right? God rest her soul. But she was like what you said. She showed me that a mom's place is not just in the kitchen, even though she was one of the best Indonesian cooks I ever came across, right? And I miss, but She was tough. She was caring, loving, and she showed her sons, well, her daughters, like, this is what you can do if you just put your mind, because she'd always say, if you work hard and put your mind to it, you can do anything you want, right? But as a teen, mom, you don't know what you're talking about, right? But going back to you, right? So you've gone through this rowing for 40 days, 40 nights. When did you get your diagnosis about, was that after or before?
It was after the row. So we finished the row at the end of January 2022, and I was diagnosed in May. And so it's probably took probably about a month or 5 weeks or so to you from going to see my doctor to then getting the diagnosis. So the symptoms started during the row, but I didn't know that that's what they were. And actually, when you look back, it's quite funny. Um, on an ocean rowing boat, there are very basic facilities. So the toilet is a builder's bucket, just a regular bucket. And I developed this habit of needing to go to the loo more often than most people during night shifts. I don't know why it happened, but I would get cramping in my tummy and have to go and use the bucket. And it became a bit of a standing joke on the boat. And in fact, I won an award for it. So towards the end of the race, we held the Mothership Awards, and I got the award for mother most likely to need an inconvenient poo on night shift. It was hardly a glamorous one, but it was the award that I got. But we all laughed it off because there was nothing normal about what we were doing. There was nothing normal about rowing 16 hours a day. There was nothing normal about the type of food we were eating or the quantity of food we were eating. And so almost it would have been odd if there hadn't been a change in bowel habits. So nobody thought anything, anything really of it. And it was only when I got back that it didn't settle down. And in fact, the need to go to the loo more often continued. I started getting more and more cramping in my tummy and then started noticing blood as well. And it was at that point that I thought, this isn't right. I'd better go to the doctors. And yeah, one thing led to another. And throughout the process of being tested, it was always to rule it out. I was always told it's highly unlikely to be anything serious. We just need to rule it out. And then, of course, it was the one thing that wasn't ruled out. And I heard the words that I suppose you always wonder how you're going to react, but you hope you never hear, you've got cancer. And suddenly my world turned upside down, and there I was facing my next monumental challenge, a very different challenge, but I suppose one that the row had thoroughly prepared me for, both in terms of physical strength and mental strength.
Well, you gained that mental and physical strength through the rowing, right? Because I'm sure when you were going through that, you probably treated it to nerves, right? Like, I'm rowing all the time, I'm in the ocean, right? It's probably just nerves, right? And you get your diagnoses, right? Like you said, no one wants to hear the C word, as they say, right? Like, it's just something that no one wants to hear.
No.
So now there's that new challenge, right? They tell you, okay, Felicity, you have cancer. How far along was it when you found out? And then what was that process like for you?
Yeah, so it was stage 3. I didn't know to start with that it was stage 3. So when I was told, it was during my colonoscopy that I was told that I had cancer. And I mean, all I was told was that it's a large tumor. It was about 6 centimeters in diameter, going 2/3 of the way across my bowel. So I knew it was large, but I didn't know if it had spread or whether it was curable or whether it was terminal at that point. Then I had various scans. And so I had about 5 or 6 days between being told I had cancer and then having a reasonable picture of how far it had spread or gone. And so the scans came back reasonably positive, and so it looked like it hadn't spread to other organs at that point. And then I had surgery about 3 weeks after my diagnosis, so major abdominal surgery to remove the tumor. And then it was a couple of weeks after that when they did the analysis on the tumor and surrounding lymph nodes that they found there were cancer cells in some of the lymph nodes. And therefore that dictated that it was stage 3 cancer and I'd need chemo. So about 6 weeks after my surgery, I then went on to have 4 months of chemotherapy. to, as they say, mop up any remaining cells that they hadn't been able to take out during the surgery. So it was about 6 months of treatment all in all, which finished by the end of 2022. So having started 2022, euphoric and feeling invincible on the top of the world, having just, having become one of fewer than 250 women in the world to erode an ocean, and then being diagnosed with cancer, I had my treatment to then finish it, having come to the end of my treatment. It was just such a weird year to go through, massive high to massive low, but then, coming out of it all the other end, still positive, and in many ways still being able to see that the cancer is, I'm not necessarily sure it was an opportunity, but not the worst thing in the world. It did open doors for me. It did it gave me a new perspective, it gave me a new purpose, and made me see life in a very different way. And for those reasons, I can't say it was 100% a terrible thing. Of course, I would never wish to be diagnosed again, and I would never wish a diagnosis on anyone, but it did make me think very differently, and I wouldn't necessarily take it back now.
Right. See, I love that, because right, if the audience is listening, if you're hearing what she's saying, right, she didn't let that stop her from becoming the best, and like in the group I belong, the best and most elite version of herself, right? Yes, her mind is going to go to different places, right? Chemo, I love, don't you love how they said we're going to just mop up the rest of this, right? As you're going through chemo, and we all know chemo does not feel good either, right? Because
Nope.
and but I mean, you stood strong, right? God, talk about highs and lows, right? You just came off an extreme high for doing the rowing, and then you get this. So what I'm getting at is, everybody, listen to what Felicity is telling you, right? No matter what, she just trusted the process. That's what I'm gathering too, right? And she just kept putting one foot in front of the other. And Felicity will agree with me, right? Sometimes it's 5 steps forward, you might take a couple back, but you got to keep like pushing yourself to the next few steps again and again, right? Because it, like you said, this is my belief and my opinion, right? That's God opening doors for you in other areas. One, not only for yourself and your family, but to help others understand that we are powerful beings, right? Like someone told me, we are strong souls having a human experience, right? And right, if you're listening to Felicity, like she's very strong. Like I'm very honored she's here, everybody, right? Telling this story, right? So let's move on, right? Like, okay, so you go through that, right? I mean, I know you probably had moments of where you go, I just need a vacation from all this and relax, right? But as a mom, I know, and a wife, you probably couldn't do that. You got 3 children to take care of.
Yeah.
What was the point where you go, I'm going to put this in a book so I can help others do the same?
Um, I- so the first, when I had my surgery, when I came round from the anesthetic, I just felt really compelled to share on social media a picture of me finishing the row looking super fit and strong, alongside a picture of me in my hospital gown with tubes up my nose looking horrendous, to show the juxtaposition of the two things. Because it was so clear to me that I needed to share this story to help other people. Because I think, especially when you're relatively young, and I was relatively young to have a cancer diagnosis, you kind of think, especially, and if you're fit and you feel healthy, you kind of fall into that trap of thinking, well, it won't happen to me, I'm going to be fine. And, much as I don't want to be a prophet of doom, I wanted to send that message out that it can happen to anyone at any point in their lives. It happened to me when I was fitter and stronger than I'd ever been. And in cancer terms, I was really, really young. And so it really can happen to everyone. And the way to help people is to raise awareness of things like the symptoms and that it can happen at any point in your life, because the key to better patient outcomes is early diagnosis. And so I just felt really compelled to share that story, to try and help other people not have to go through it in the future, or not have to hear a terminal diagnosis. And part of that really was, I think, looking back, gratitude for people that had gone before me and shared their stories, which had given me the awareness of symptoms that meant I went to see my doctor. And one of those people was another rower in the same race who was rowing in memory of his wife who had died of bowel cancer in her 30s. And he used to post really regularly on Facebook and other social media channels about the symptoms. And even though at the time I had no real reason to take much notice of it, somewhere along the line it sunk in. And it was probably reading his posts that gave me that awareness and meant that when I noticed the same symptoms, I went to the GP. And so part of it, I think, was about paying forward that debt really that other people have done before me in terms of raising awareness of symptoms and helping other people. And that really became part of my, I suppose, my new purpose through the whole thing was to help other people, to talk about it, but also to talk about it in a positive way and show that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and that almost regardless of the news that you hear, you can find ways through it. Whether that's through, for me, exercise was a huge factor in helping me get through it. It was something that I could control. It became almost like my anchor in the whole process, keeping me, keeping me level almost. But I also knew that it was helping me mentally as well, because I thought, well, if I'm staying fit and strong, and if I can still march around the countryside for an hour or more, then surely I'm going to be okay. So it was that interplay between physical health and mental health as well for me. And also a lot of it was around mindset. And I talked about, reframing earlier and, looking for reasons to say yes, or looking for your cans rather than your can'ts. And in a similar way, it was when I was diagnosed, I think it would have been so easy to kind of think, woe is me, and to wallow in self-pity and think, why me? I've just rode the Atlantic, I'm young, I'm a mom, why me? But actually, I was able to turn that on its head and think, well, why not me? I
Yeah.
am young,
Right.
I'm fit, I'm strong. I've got three amazing children who are my motivation for getting through this. So why not me? There's not many people in a better position than me to tackle this challenge. And I think that ability to reframe and have a positive mindset through it is so important. And it's something now as a speaker that I talk about, almost whatever challenge you're facing, just trying to harness the power of a positive mindset is so powerful.
I love it, right? Because it is so easy to just dive into that poor me's and show the world, like, please pity me because I feel like crap. Excuse my, you know what I mean? Like, but what it does, it takes strength and courage and grit to do the opposite, right? Because you're right. You're helping people now understand, and especially being fit and healthy and right. So if you listen to what Felicity's saying, I believe what I hear is it's not only a healthy body, right? But a healthy mind, like having your mind, but you've proven it, right? Through exercise and staying fit has kept your mind strong. Because I know I've been on the other end where I haven't done that, right? When my body feels like, bleh, right? Then I feel like my head feels like, but when I start getting healthy and moving my body, then all of a sudden it's like my mind starts to follow, right? And then I want to grow and get better. So I push myself, I'm 57, right? But I got to remember, don't push myself too hard because I've had injuries, right? I won't fold, but I'm going to be the one that's going to be dragging myself across the floor. I'm not quitting yet, right? Because I can't. So in your book, do you talk about that? Like how, like through the cancer and all that, how it started to change your mindset and, everything, the rowing, being a mother, and what
Yeah.
is some of that you present to people? Like, this is how, like, I'm sure people are going, Felicity, teach me how to do that because I'm having a hard time. You get what I'm
Yeah, I do. It's called Stronger Than the Storm, for obvious reasons probably, but it's about, it's about facing any kind of challenges or adversity and coming out stronger the other end. And it's really it's a very personal account of my story from the formative years of my childhood through the hip replacement, then the row, then the cancer treatment, and really how I've approached all of that. So it's not kind of lessons laid out in a very kind of business structured format, but it does very much I talk about how I've approached those challenges and the mindset tools and techniques that I've used, and the power of this sort of positivity and positive mindset. And so I think there are, a huge number of lessons I hope that people can take from it who may be facing their own challenges, or who've got loved ones facing similar or different challenges. People who can, I think, learn a lot from my experiences, and hopefully it can help people see things in a different way, have a different perspective on life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love it, right? Because if I'm having a rough day, I'm going to go, well, Felicity can do it. I can do it. So I got to go read her book and see how she did it, right? Because if we give people like, what do you call that? Not a plan, but like like a guide, maybe they don't follow it completely, but they get pick and choose from different people. And that's why I love that you're here, because I mean, this is a story of not just courage, strength, all that, right? But fortitude and just not letting life's challenges get you down, right? But
Yeah.
like you said, you have three wonderful, and your husband, of course, wonderful reasons to keep going. But I'm sure you've met people like I have, where it's just like no matter what you try to help them with or teach them, they're just like, nope. They walk around like
Yeah.
everything's against them. They're the victim. No one's trying to help them when the help's right in front of them. So that's why I want everybody to, you've heard Felicity, right? It's all like the saying I heard how it goes. Life doesn't happen to me, it happens for me, right? And those challenges come up are the experiences, if you agree or not, but I think you will, are the ones that are going to shape who we are as human beings, and then how we help the world around us, right? Like, because then we become an example, not only for our families, but for everyone we come in contact with, right? Because
Yeah.
like I'm sitting here listening to Felicity's story and I'm just going like, wow, like she has one challenge after the other, some more positive than the others. And then bam, right into one that you just want to kind of cry and go, I just rode. And now you want to tell me I got cancer, right? But you took it as an opportunity to grow, right? And that's like what I want people to understand. That's the resilience right here with Felicity is what I want you to see, because she did not let any of that stop her. And now she's here. She's got a book out, and she's here to help the world, right? And teach us how to be one. It looks like not only it's grateful for where we are in life, but how to change, like you said, reframe things in our minds so that we can keep moving forward. And that to me, Felicity, is a blessing, right? We need more people like you out there to show us that, these challenges aren't the end of our life. It's just a new door is going to open, right? And show us the
Yeah.
way.
Absolutely. And it's not about saying that challenges aren't tough and they're not hard and they don't happen, but it's about
Right.
offering hope and inspiration to people to keep going through them, that they will be able to find some light at the end of the tunnel. And sometimes you can't see it when you're in the thick of it, but it's having that self-belief and that hope that if you keep going, if you keep putting one step in front of the other, you will come out the other side of it and you will find the silver lining. Um, but it's not just about people having hope, it's also about people taking action as well. You've got to help yourself. Um, you can't just sit there and wallow. You've got to be positive and you've got to take those steps. And as you mentioned earlier, it's about trusting in that process and just picking yourself up as many times as you have to keep going. Um, yeah. I mean, I think there's so much about taking action and taking accountability and responsibility for yourself in whatever challenges you're going through as well. But also about, looking around you at your support network and not being afraid to ask other people for help too. Because I think sometimes we think we have to do it ourselves, and it maybe takes a bit of courage to ask for help, but I think we all need to lean into that more and surround ourselves with the right people who can help us at the right time, and never be afraid to ask for that help. Because people are only too willing to step in and help. In fact, people love to be asked. And so
Right.
actually it's a good thing from both perspectives.
Absolutely. Right. I have been taught, right, where in my past, I would think asking for help, especially a man, at least for me, and the generation before me that I witnessed, right? Like, oh no, you don't ask for help. You just brush yourself off and keep going. And then you suck it up, buttercup, as they would say, but you just said it and I know is that asking for help is actually a sign of strength.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Because we don't have to do life alone. I mean, man, so I know there's so many directions I could go with this, but this is awesome, right? So not only are you motivational, Felicity, but you're very inspirational with your story and what you've been through. I mean, I know you're helping me, and I know you're helping the audience by bringing so much value, but I'm going to ask you the questions I do remember that I was teasing about earlier. But so we're going to start with happiness, right? No, or fearless, excuse me. What does fearless look like to you today, and how does that show up in your life on a daily basis?
So yeah, I think it's about not denying that fear exists, but actually seeing it again as a positive and using it to embracing it and using it to fuel your preparation so that you can get through whatever it is that's causing you that fear. So I actually think it's a positive thing because certainly in my experience, it's what makes me work harder, so that I can kind of almost control that, and that then reduces the element of fear. And I can then sort of rationalize it rather than it being this looming thing that stops me.
Right. Which I think a lot of people do, right? The fear comes up and it's like, oh, you put on the brakes, I'm done. Um,
Yeah.
Another example from Felicity, right? Everybody, you use it as a strength to move forward, right? Because in the end, will we all be fearless? No. I've said this before, but what I've learned from my mentors and stuff, we'll learn how to fear less. And then we just keep moving forward, right? So that leads me
Yeah.
into my next question, happiness. Now I'll go see, I put a Y in it. What does happiness mean to you, and how does that show up in your life on a daily basis?
I mean, I'm lucky. I think I was born an optimist. My name means happiness, and whether I've lived up to the label or I was just, it was just a great name for me in the first place, I don't know. But it's something that I feel has always come naturally to me, and I look for reasons to be happy and positive rather than anything else. I have always felt that's a massive blessing. Um, but for me now, it's about, I think, living life in harmony with my purpose. So everything I do, has meaning and it's entirely in keeping with my values and what I want from life. So it's about making the decisions that feel right for me rather than making decisions that I think other people want me to make, whether that's from a work perspective or a family perspective or an adventure perspective. It's about doing the things that I know will help me live a life in harmony with my purpose.
I love it. I love it. Well, this has been huge, a great time. I've learned so much about you and it's been fun. But I'm going to ask you, like, if the audience wants to get in touch with you, right? Or they want you to come speak, find your book, or just want to ask you questions about your whatever
Yeah.
you're growing or your cancer, diagnosis. How do they get a hold of you, Felicity?
It's very easy. Fortunately, my name is fairly unusual. So my website is felicityashley.com. I'm also on social media, Instagram, Felicity Ashley Speaker, or LinkedIn, Felicity Ashley. So those are probably the best places to find me. And I would absolutely love to have conversations, answer any questions, whether it's coming to speak for people, or obviously there's my book as well, Stronger Than the Storm, which is available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle now.
I love it. Um, wow, this has been an amazing time, Felicity. I know we could go because now I got the questions going through my mind. I always love when my guests and you brought it. Thank you so much for one being here and for sharing your story with us. But you're not quite off the hook just yet. I
That's
get to
something
ask you my favorite question that I ask of all my guests, and it goes like this. So, what is the one piece of advice, Felicity, that you could give my audience to help them grow as human beings and become better people?
I'm going to give my favorite quote, or one of my favorite quotes, which is, "You don't have to be great to start, but you do have to start to be great." And I think self-doubt and imposter syndrome holds us all back from doing the things that we really want to do. And we think we're not good enough, we think we can't do it, and we put the brakes on. But I think what we all have to remember is Olympic champions have to start somewhere. Everyone has to start somewhere. Nobody's born an Olympic champion. And so you just have to have the courage and self-belief to get started and take the first step. And on the whole, the first step is just about telling yourself, I can and I will, and making that mental commitment to help you move forward. And so, yeah, I think it's don't hold yourself back by self-belief, but have the courage to say yes, take that first step, and know that you will learn what you need to learn along the way, but you don't need to know it all now.
I love it. I love it. I'm going to take that with me. You don't have to know everything at the moment. You just have to take that step. Beautiful. Well, Felicity, I love it. It's been such an amazing time. Thank you for being here and joining me today, all the way from the UK. I'm so honored that you are here. And you heard her, everybody. If Felicity made you think, if Felicity taught you something, if Felicity made you smile, and my famous, if Felicity made you go, I like that, please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star review so more people can find the podcast. And again, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or whatever, wherever you are in this world. This is Max from the Fearless Happiness Podcast. Until next time.
Are you tired of being weighed down by life's traumas and struggles? Join the Fearless Happiness lifestyle and let us guide you toward a brighter future. Explore our past podcast episodes and get a copy of the Fearless Happiness book to ignite your inner strength. If you or someone you love is battling addiction or facing challenges related to unresolved trauma, know that we are here for you. Visit maxnijst.org, maxnijst.org, and take the first steps toward finding your fearless happiness. Thank you for listening. This has been a production of Fearless Happiness.